there's this belief that if we're kind to ourselves, that we're not going to be motivated to do things. So that can be one of the ways.
Apologize to him on behalf of the medical community, because that was not a pill problem. That was a provider problem.
First of all, it's highly unlikely that you are the only person with ADHD in your family, because ADHD is highly familial. It's as familial as height.
I like to start with, what do people want? What kind of relationship do they see in the long term with their children?
It's not your job to make other people's anxiety about the decisions you have to make in your life go away.
We're going to need our village there with us. And whether that is the village that we were born with, whether we find those friends, whether we have to pay for a village, whatever it is that we need to do to create the support and the help that we need, we have to.
Perspective and seeing our children as teachers versus seeing them as objects. And that's a big one.
In child psychiatry, child adolescent psychiatry, it flipped my understanding totally. And it made sense in retrospect, where we're able to be like, oh yeah, you don't wake up when you're 18 years old and all these things are gone and taken care of. It's not like, ta-da, we wake up and we're grown as adult at 18, right? And we should be over these things.
What was it that your partner needed growing up? An advocate. They needed an advocate, somebody who was going to go to bat for them.
And we should be working in our strengths 80% of the time. And I kind of build upon that with the work that I do and say, yeah, 80% of the time, please be in your strengths. And 20% of the time, the stuff that you're not good at, let's outsource, automate, and delegate those parts of your lives.
How did, when mom and dad went through hard things, or stepmom or stepdad, like how did you see them dealing with things or coping? And then you hear something like, oh, well, mom, she'd lock herself in the bedroom and not come out for a couple weeks.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, like, it's okay. Isn't that interesting? Okay. Like, and how long did that go on? And you hear more about it. And then it's clear there's actually a pretty significant family history. Just nobody named it.
At the very least, I was encouraged to begin putting some of that money away because of being able to utilize power of compound interest, right?
So that was the only math concept I understood. That and opportunity cost.
Yeah.
I got that down pat.
I taught math for a couple of years before.
The idea isn't so much to be able to not ever be defensive. It's more like to be able to catch yourself in the moment, to take a breath, and to be able to ask for a restart in that conversation.
We're learning more about like relationship OCD or sexual orientation OCD. Those subtypes didn't necessarily quote unquote exist several years ago, but they did exist. People were still having those thoughts. It's not like all of a sudden people are having those thoughts. We're talking about it more now, and
we kind of have to give ourselves permission to do things a little bit differently.
Giving ourselves the permission to play up our strengths and honor our challenges and the unique ways that we need to be extra careful in practice, so that we're making sure that we are doing the best that we can by taking ownership of our neurodivergence.
I met with every Ministry of Education last year, researched what they're doing, how they don't recognize ADHD, how they support students, and gave each province a grade. And unfortunately, Ontario failed again. So
any food is better than no food. I really hope people are able to give themselves permission to eat any food that is going to help nourish them. Sometimes there are just so many rules and so many shoulds and shouldn'ts and expectations around nutrition and nourishment that we can get really stuck in this all or nothing perfectionist lens.
We are masters of task avoidance, and task initiation is really hard for things that are boring. We have no problem starting tasks that are interesting, things we're organically interested in, but boring stuff, forget it. We're such masters of avoidance that we might not even know that the thing that we're enjoying doing, I don't know, maybe me doing this podcast in all of my spare time, might actually be a procrastination strategy.
Where you expect people to be unemotional, to not have feelings, to not be going through anything, and they come to work and produce and be productive.
Yeah, it's horseshit. It's absolute. Am I allowed to say that?
You can say whatever you want.
Absolute horseshit, because we spend so much of our life
at work.
Yes.
It's a doubting disorder. And so when you're doubting those very people or doubting your ability to be in relationship to those people, it causes a huge impairment and a lot of like just hurt within you. It can look any type of way. It can look like someone not trusting their partner despite trusting them, having a lot of intrusive thoughts about whether they should, right? Is this person maybe going off and doing something crazy behind my back, and feeling the urge to go and do compulsions to make sure that they are not. It might look like feeling that you are not worthy of being in a relationship.
We're in a culture that tells us to work hard and tells us we should be tired from it. And because of that, it's very hard to, it's very hard to identify, like, I'm actually burnt out, because why is that not just what you're supposed to get from work? Aren't you supposed to be tired and disconnected sometimes? But I think,
and that's the other thing too, is most entrepreneurs, you don't realize, and this is where a lot of us fail, is we actually create our own company so we can create a place that we're accepted.